Hello dear students, welcome to this video lecture series on behalf of Project SATHEE. I'm Dr. Animesh and today we are going to discuss abatement of crime in the continuation of our criminal law series. Moving forward, let's talk about what we discussed in the last class. In the last class, we had discussed the topic of joint liability. That was in Module 1, Lecture 6. Now in the joint liability, we discussed the same chart that there are people who are, there are types of offenders. Some are principal of first degree, principal of second degree. Those who are principal of first degree are liable by the virtue of the very act they are committing. Means they are actually involved first hand. They are the first people who are held responsible for a crime because the crime is committed primarily by their hands. Then we hold all those people who participate in that act, whatever things they might do, whatever part they might play in that particular offense, all those will be held liable and they are called principal of second degree. कि भाई क्राइम मर्डर एक ने किया पर जिसने उसमें सपोर्ट किया उसको while being present at the scene of the crime. Participation is must. Those who actively participation in commission of the crime will be held liable by the principle of joint liability that we discussed in the last class. In today's class, we are talking about accessory. Accessories are obviously, as the name suggests, accessory is someone who helps the person in committing the crime while not being directly involved in it. Accessory is someone who facilitates that crime, but he is what we call parde ke piche. He is behind the curtains, and the person who is behind the curtain is called accessory. Now, accessories are of two types. Accessory before the fact. Before the fact, here fact means crime. Those who help the crime while being behind the scenes, number one, or number two, who help the criminals escape the law. The legal consequences are called accessory after the fact. Those who try to conceal the commission of a crime are called accessory after the fact. And today our discussion is about accessories only. Okay, accessories are called abettors. So abatement. Abatement is something that is very important. Abatement is simply transfer or sharing of criminal intent from one mind to another. One person has criminal intent. I suppose I want to commit a crime. So ideally, I should keep it with me. Ideally, I should not act on it. But instead of acting on it myself, I transfer it to someone else. That is what we call abatement. So abatement is when you transfer your criminal intent to someone, you share your criminal intent with someone, just like in the case of conspiracy, or you use someone as a tool to commit a crime. These are three types in which by abatement can be done generally. When you actually transfer your criminal intent to someone, you share their criminal intent, or you use that person as a tool to commit a crime. Humans can be used as a tool as well. Now, suppose I have a servant. I ask that servant to fetch me a glass of water. So obviously, what I am doing is what I am asking he is doing. So that person is a tool for me. And I am someone's servant. I am the tool of the university. University has to impart the education. So university has asked me to do that. So obviously, I am a tool for the university to achieve its objective of imparting quality legal education. So that is how it works. So abatement happens in primarily three ways. Abatement means what? Abatement means simply a situation in which one person transfers his criminal intent, shares the criminal intent with those others, or uses another innocent person as a tool towards committing the crime. So these are three ways generally abatement is coming. As far as legal classification is considered, first thing first, abatement firstly means instigation. Abatement means instigation. Instigation simply means to urge, to provoke, to inspire to commit someone a crime. If you are instigating someone, it means that you are urging, provoking, you are simply pressurizing somehow. You are putting thoughts in that person's mind and you are insisting that the person should commit a crime. So that is what we call instigation. Now, instigation, the most primary example is when People, they don't want to commit a crime themselves or not capable of committing the crime themselves, so they instigate someone else to do a commit crime. That is called contract killing. Contract killing is a very good example of it. Contract killing में क्या होता है बच्चों, बताइए. सुपारी killing you must have heard. Suppose I want to kill someone, I do not find myself in a position to commit that act. I simply hire someone who is a capable killer. You go and you kill. That happens. That is a very accepted way of doing things in the criminal psyche. So that is what we call instigation. When you have criminal intent, that person who you hired had no enmity with the victim, but you transferred your criminal intent into that person, that you go and kill and I will pay you money. So that is something called what we call instigation. Another very interesting way of instigating is when you brainwash someone to do your bidding. Again, I take the example of terrorists act. Like Ajmal Kasab was 18 or 19 years old when he came to India and committed a heinous crime. But it was not the Ajmal Kasab's mind that was involved in that particular action. It was the mind of the terrorist mastermind sitting in Pakistan, Ajmal Kasab. Osama bin Laden himself didn't crash the planes into the Twin Towers. He used certain people to do his bidding. He simply transferred his criminal intent. He brainwashed, he instigated those people. He convinced those people, those terrorists, those who might be young people, not very educated, people of very uh, religious fanatic persons, like very simple persons, that, oh yes, India is our enemy, America is our enemy, you should go and you should kill. 2-3 days back in New Orleans in America, somebody rammed his truck into a crowd, killing several people. Obviously, he was inspired by the ISIS, Islamic State, that organization, the terrorist organization. You get inspired, you get, so people instigate. So somebody who has instigated someone will be held liable. And instigation can be by two ways. Instigation can be done. One is by words and another by conduct. Sometimes you instigate someone by actually saying thing what to do. Another is instigation is when you leave no other choice for that person by your conduct but to do a criminal act. Like abatement to suicide is an example of that. When you abet someone to commit suicide, there can be a case when you can say you go commit suicide, your life is like this, and or sometimes you make their life so miserable that they will be compelled to commit suicide. Like in a case when suppose there is a daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law simply tortures her day in and day night, that okay, you are not giving us a male child, you cannot cook, you cannot clean, or whatever the case may be. A number of things she can say that is hurtful, traumatizing. In that case, if that person commits a crime, that is called instigation by conduct. So you can also instigate someone, especially if it is to commit suicide by conduct. You might not say something and you ask someone to do your bidding, because you have, by your conduct, you have made that person's life so miserable. Sometimes you offer no choice to that person. That is also considered as instigation. Instigation is a very serious thing. There is also a very interesting example of a case when people instigated a woman to commit sati by shouting or chanting Sati Maiya ki Jai, Sati Maiya ki Jai. That woman was instigated to commit sati by simply glorifying that particular act. And some 150 years back in some parts of Bharat, that used to happen. Very rare instances, but that used to happen. That particular woman was asked to actually commit self-immolation commit suicide by chanting Sati Maiya ki Jai. That's very problematic. Everybody who did that will be held liable for instigation. You have committed a crime by instigating that person to commit a crime. So that is very, very problematic. Second part of it is bachcho conspiracy. What is conspiracy? You will ask. Conspiracy in Hindi what we call is shadyantra. Or shadyantra obviously means 6 people. Conspiracy ideally required 6 people. 6 people, if they are deciding to do some illegal act, that is called conspiracy in our ancient jurisprudence. In modern law, in Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, conspiracy can be done by 2 people. And conspiracy simply means designing an offense. It does not simply mean thinking of an offense. If 2 people think, yes, that will commit a crime, that is one thing. is they design a particular offense, that this is how we'll commit a crime. Now, conspiracy involves some detailing of a particular criminal action. It is not only about what, it is also about how. क्या करना है और कैसे करना है. That is called conspiracy. If you agree on what criminal act has to be done, that is called conspiring. Okay, that being said, conspiracy, if it is not acted upon, it is not considered criminal. Suppose several people conspired to commit an act, and out of them, a few actually committed the crime. And the person who might be the main conspirator might stay behind. Like there is the famous show I take reference, the Money Heist. Money Heist, if even if you have seen, it's good, but the primary idea of that Money Heist, there is a professor, there is a main person who shares the plan to several people, and he instigates, abets, and conspires with them to actually commit a crime. So some overt act, some positive act must be done in order to punish a person for abatement by conspiracy. If I have conspired with certain people to commit a crime, something must be done in pursuance of that. Means, if simply I have made a plan, it is not generally punishable as abatement. It is not generally punishable as abatement. It can be made punishable by criminal conspiracy. It is a separate offense. We have a separate offense of criminal conspiracy in which conspiring itself is a crime. But as far as abatement by conspiracy is considered, unless and until something is done in furtherance of that conspiracy. मतलब आपने प्लान बनाया, अगर उस प्लान के परसुएंस में कुछ हुआ ही नहीं, किसी ने कुछ किया ही नहीं, तो आप पर अबेटमेंट बाय कॉन्स्पिरेसी का चार्ज नहीं लग सकता. अबेटमेंट बाय कॉन्स्पिरेसी के लाइबल नहीं हो सकते, है ना. और कॉन्स्पिरेसी मींस डिजाइन, नॉट ओनली थिंकिंग अबाउट अ क्राइम, इट मींस डिजाइन ऑफ अ क्राइम, है ना. And something that is that in furtherance, done in furtherance of that, then criminal conspiracy के लिए you will be held liable. जहां तक बात आती है बच्चों के किसी लोगों ने सिर्फ कॉन्स्पिरेसी की, उसके फर्दरेंस में कुछ नहीं किया, तो वो अंग्रेजों ने बाद में, जो अभी भी इट इज ऑब्वियसली पार्ट ऑफ आवर लॉ टिल नाउ, क्रिमिनल कॉन्स्पिरेसी in itself is an offense, is a separate offense that we will discuss. When we will discuss that, we'll come to that. Criminal conspiracy in itself is an offense. वो एक अलग चीज है. जहां तक अबेटमेंट बाय कॉन्स्पिरेसी की बात है, it requires a design, obviously multiple people of committing a crime, and something must be done in furtherance of that. So इसके लिए हम लोग कहते हैं, तो कहते हैं कॉन्स्पिरेसी. अच्छा, इंस्टिगेशन में जरूरी नहीं है कि जो आपने इंस्टिगेट किया हो जिस व्यक्ति को, वो इंस्टिगेट हो भी गया हो. इंस्टिगेशन अपने आप में भी क्राइम है. सपोज मैंने किसी को इंस्टिगेट किया कि आओ चलो लेट्स रॉब अ बैंक. मैंने आप लोगों को खूब, सपोज आई हैव 50 स्टूडेंट्स listening to this video and I instigate you, let's go and let's rob a bank. Go and rob a bank nearest to you. You will say, nonsense. What is saying? But nonetheless, suppose none of you did that hideous act, but I will nevertheless will be liable if I actually intended to instigate you. If there is actual need of an instigation के लिए बच्चों एक और बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट चीज चाहिए, वो है कि मेरा क्रिमिनल इंटेंट होना बहुत जरूरी है. अगर मैंने किसी को कोई बात मजाक में कह दी, है ना, आई वाज जस्ट मेकिंग फन ऑफ इट, और आई हैड नो क्रिमिनल इंटेंट, बट आई वाज एंजॉयिंग इट, वाज जोकिंग, है ना. जैसे कि मेनी ऑफ यू मस्ट हैव heard this is a social media trend or something, कि somebody insults someone, another person says, भाई मैं तो ना सहता. I would not have suffered that. I would not have done nothing if this was have been done to me. भाई मैं तो ना सहता, मैं तो ऐसा कर देता. Now that is generally said while in jest, in joke. So if I do not have a criminal intention, I simply said, अरे भाई मैं तो ना सहता, and he goes actually and commits a heinous crime. Now, if the police arrests me, I will say, sir, how come I am expected to know that this person is so insane that he'll go and actually commit a crime? This is a joke. This is everything to be people say. So, in order to punish me for instigation, it will have to be proved that I actually intended to instigate that other person to commit a crime. If that was not the case, I didn't actually, I never intended that other person be instigated for committing of that crime, then I will not be held liable. So conspiracy requires some overt act. Instigation requires obviously the intent to instigate. Then third, obviously the name suggests intentional aid, helping a person committing a crime. So intentional aid may you have to supply the principal offender something. Either it can be money for committing a crime, it can be weapon, it can be vehicle, it can be information. You must have seen, if you are fan of Bollywood movie, whenever a kidnapping is supposed or a murder is supposed to happen, there is a person who is there and who is supplying the information कि घर से निकल गया है, is there साइकिल में चेन चढ़ाते हुए and there लाल गमछा बांध करके वो बैठे रहते हैं. He'll just give information. Okay, this person has now left the home, is going towards the market. There is a very funny scene about this in Gangs of Wasipur, where a person is coordinating and keeping an eye on the victim, and everybody is coordinating about committing the murder and all. So that is an extremely funny scene. So intentional aid means supplying either information, material, weapon, what the vehicle, whatever the case may be. If you are aiding, knowing it to be used for criminal activity, you will be held liable. If you didn't know, somebody came and asked for your knife and you gave it to him without knowing whether he's going to cut vegetable or a person with the use of that knife, it's not your fault. Intentional means you knew what it is going to be used for and you gave it nevertheless. And your intent must be there to assist that person in committing the crime. If you had no intention of assisting that person in committing the crime, your liability is not there. If you don't want to be part of that crime, your liability is not there. And as you are a chemist, somebody comes to and asks you something poisonous, you give that person that poison. Absolutely, you have no liability. You have what we call plausible deniability, that I don't know anything. How come I'll? So if you don't know, you don't intend to have that consequence, your liability will not be there. But if you aided that person in committing that crime, your liability will be there. This intentional aid can also be considered accessory after the fact. After the crime has been committed, if you intentionally help a person from escaping the law enforcement agency or escaping justice, in that case, you will also be held liable for abatement. That is called harboring. So if you harbor a criminal, you give that person shelter. If you give that person food, you give that person money, you give that person vehicle, you give that person a disguise, whatever the case may be. You lie for that person. Police comes and say, "आप भागते हुए देखा क्या?" आपने कहा नहीं देखा. That is called intentional aid. If you have tried concealment of the crime, if you help that person clean up the crime scene, then you will be held liable. If you commit a crime and people come and भाई उसने खून से सनी शर्ट लेकर के आई and you destroyed that. That is what we call intentional aid. So if intentional offense of intentional aid is committed by any person, except there is a limited exception in respect of spouse. So in case of spouse, there is a exception, but in generally, if you have committed help another person escaping the crime, you will be held liable as an abetter. Okay, so there are three ways the instigation can be done. Number one, you instigate someone, you urge someone to commit a crime. If they do that, actually, that's higher punishment. If they don't do that, there is lesser punishment, but nonetheless, punishment is there in any case. Conspiracy requires, in order to be culpable, in order to be punishable, something must be done in furtherance of that conspiracy. And intentional aid, obviously, if a crime is committed in pursuance of that aid, then it is higher penalty. If nothing is done, if you gave gun to someone to commit a bank robbery, he did nothing, still you will be held liable. And obviously, when it comes accessory after the fact, crime is already committed. And you try to hide that person, you try to save that person from law enforcement agency, police or CBI or whatever the case may be, your liability will be there. चलिए ठीक है. अब देखिए इंस्टिगेशन क्या हो. इंस्टिगेशन का मतलब हम लोगों ने समझा. इट मीन्स टू अर्ज, इट मीन्स टू प्रोवोक, इट मीन्स टू हेल्प द पर्सन कमिट द क्राइम. यू आर पुटिंग योर क्रिमिनल इंटेंशन इनटू समवन्स एल्सेस माइंड. अब बच्चों दूसरी बात आ सकती है इसमें. अनदर कॉम्प्लिकेशन दैट कम इज इंस्टिगेशन ऑफ एन इनोसेंट पर्सन. In the beginning, I discussed that sometimes people can be used as a tool to commit a crime. Now, if I am instigating someone who does not know what they are doing and they are simply following my instruction. Suppose I'll give you 3-4 examples. Suppose I'm a doctor, okay, and there is a patient whom I want to kill. So what I did, I gave a medicine to the nurse that sister, you just administer this um, medicine to this patient. What nurse is supposed to do? You tell me. Obviously, she will comply. She'll go and administer that medicine to that patient. That patient dies, that eats that poisonous medicine, dies. Now that medicine was administered by whom? Nurse. So whether the nurse is liable or not, you will say, sir, why nurse will be liable? She didn't know that it is poison. The answer is correct. Yes, nurse didn't know. But the doctor will be held liable. The answer is yes. Why? Doctor used that nurse as a tool. Innocent person. So if you use an innocent person as a tool who didn't know anything, in that case, you will be held liable and not that innocent person. Suppose there is a small child, 6-year-old, and I give him a candy, poisonous candy, I wrap it in a wrapper, and I give it to that small child, and I जाओ उस अंगून अंकल को ना टॉफी देकर गा जाओ. I point to a person, ये टॉफी उन अंकल को देकर आओ. That child goes and gives that child toffee to that uncle. Uncle eats the toffee, dies. Obviously, child is liable. No, answer is no. Whether I am liable? Yes. Suppose I go to hunt with one of my friend. Hunt in simply we're in jungle, and I see that my enemy is sitting behind a bush. So I ask my friend. This is very common question in CLAT. I ask my friend, see that in behind that bush there is a animal, and let's kill that animal, and it will be fun. So my friend shoots a bullet towards that bush, hits my enemy dies. Now the question is whether my friend who actually fired the bullet will be liable. Answer is no, because my friend thought it to be an animal. But whether I will be held liable, answer is yes. So if I have abetted someone, I have abetted an innocent person, in that case, I will be held liable. Okay. So that is what we call abetment by instigation of innocent person. Also, if I abet someone to commit something that was his duty, or I instigate someone to make an omission about his duty, which was not my duty, but I ask that person, instigate that person not to do his job, which is a criminal act, then in that case, again I will be held liable. I'll make it simple for you. Suppose एक चोर जा रहा है, भाग रहा है, thief is running. There is a police person. I go to that police person. I say कि पुलिस वाले भाई साहब 5,000 रुपए लीजिए और जो यहाँ से जा रहा है उसको जाने दीजिए. Now what I have done? I have instigated the police person, the police man, to commit an offense, to commit an illegal act. Although that was not illegal for me per se. मतलब अगर मेरे सामने से चोर जा रहा है, I'm not a policeman, whether I have a duty to arrest or to act, I have no duty. Let the thief go. But if I have instigated someone, like a police person, not to act, in that case, I will be still held liable for abetment by instigation. Okay, so that is the liability of an abetter. The liability of abetter is generally, if the offense is committed, is same as the principal offender. If I have asked someone to do a supari killing, that person goes and actually commits a supari killing, I will be held liable, just like the person who I have abetted. Secondly, if the offense is not actually committed, then my liability will be lesser. If the offense is not committed and no harm is caused, my offense liability will be lesser. If some harm is caused but not the offense that I instigated was committed, my liability will be slightly more. But if what I abetted was actually done, then my liability will be at par, equal to the principal offender. My liability will be equal. So that is what we call liability of an abetter. Conspiracy, we discussed meaning of conspiracy. Meaning of conspiracy means that obviously multiple people have come together, they have shared a criminal idea, there is a plan, there is a design to commit that offense. then obviously there is a need of an overt act. Overt act means something should be done. Conspiracy by itself is not punishable under the abatement. Conspiracy, if you have conspired but you have not done nothing about it, in that case, there is no criminal liability as far as abatement is considered. And there is no need of participation by those who conspire. Suppose 5 people conspired and only few committed the actual act. So in that case, only all of them will be held liable, even though the person who was, let's say, brain behind the operation stayed back. If that person stayed back, so liability will still be there. There is no need of actual participation in the crime. I might be the conspirator. Suppose sometimes people do inside jobs. Inside jobs means sometimes, let's say in bank, the manager is many times involved in the robbery. He shares the plan, the किस समय vault में कितना पैसा रहेगा, how much money will be there in the vault, how you can access the vault, what's the combination, every information he supplies, but he stays behind that I will not do anything. So in that case, it will be considered as abatement by conspiracy and liability will be there, notwithstanding the fact that he didn't actually himself participated in that act. That becomes very important. Sometimes inside job में जो कॉन्स्पिरेटर होता है, मेन कॉन्स्पिरेटर, ही ऑल्सो ट्राइज टू बिकम अ विक्टिम कि भाई हमारी क्या गलती, हम तो थे ही नहीं, हम ऐसा कुछ, है ना. Although he is the person who has supplied all the information, he has given design to commit that offense. So inside jobs may this happen. Okay, abatement by conspiracy. Intentional aid we discussed. Intentional aid, what it means: facilitation of or the commission of the offense. Illegal omission, I have abatement by illegal omission can also be made. If it was your duty to do something and you failed to do that, it means you have done abatement by illegal omission. If your duty was to inform someone of something, if you are, suppose you are a guard and a crime was committed and you fail to raise an alarm, your duty, if you see something suspicious, it was your duty to raise alarm. You are a sentry, you are a guard, you didn't do that. So it is called abatement by illegal omission. Intentional aid I have already explained. This will be called illegal omission. So if you help facilitating the commission of a crime, it is called intentional aid. But obviously here intentional aid is very important. If you have helped the criminals without knowing that you are helping the criminals, absolutely fine. It's not a problem. Suppose criminals came to your restaurant and they ordered food and you had no reason to suspect that these people are criminal and you served them food, absolutely fine. But if you knew that they are criminal and you still served them, in that case, you still served them and you failed to actually raise the alarm or inform the law enforcement agency about it, then you will be held liable. That is why you see there is a duty of every landlord who gives a room to the tenant to actually do a police verification of all their tenants, because you must not remember, but before the Honorable Prime Minister came into the power, the current Prime Minister we have, before 2012 and 13 and all, the India every next week some bomb blast. And some bomb blasts were committed by terrorists. They used to come to a locality, they hire a place, they do Reiki, and then they perform their criminal activity. So many a times when the police reached at the door of where the terrorists were living, the landlord say, I don't know anything, I thought they're tenants, I took rent and I gave them house. So in order to ensure the liability that nobody will give house without police verification, this rule has been enacted in multiple places, especially in metro cities. This rule is there that if you want to give a house to someone on rent, you must do a police verification. You take their Aadhaar cards. There is no cash on. Even in your hotels, if you go, they will be very suspicious. They will take your Aadhaar card and everything. They'll check. If they find anything suspicious, they will inform the police. That is there. If you are not a Bharatiya, then they will take your passport and everything. So that is something that is kept in mind. Okay. Now there can be some rules related to abatement, in which we discussed if the same act is abated and same act is done. I abated someone to commit murder and the murder was committed. In that case, my liability will be same. Suppose act abated and different act done. Means I abated something else and an altogether different act was done by the person who I abated. No? I am the abetter, I abated him to commit murder. He went and did not commit murder, but he stole the money from that person's pocket. Now the question is that whether I will be held liable for theft. The answer depends on whether what I abated and what he did are related or not. Generally, murder and theft are not related, so I will not be held liable. But suppose, let's say, I asked that person to commit theft. And that person went and he was trying to commit theft. And when I was trying to commit theft, when he was trying to commit theft, immediately what happened? That person resisted, was about to be robbed. He resisted, and the people who I abetted, they killed that person in order to escape. In that case, whether I will be held liable for murder, answer is yes. Because when I instigated them to commit theft or robbery, and obviously if any person is committing robbery or theft and suddenly they are resisted, their escape is resisted, they will try everything in their power to actually escape. So if they killed someone, I will be held liable. I asked them to rob a bank, they went, they shot the guard, I will be held liable for murder as well. I instigated them. If I instigated them to commit robbery and they murdered someone, I will be held liable, obviously. But if I abetted something different, like I abetted them to commit bank robbery, they went there and they somebody caught and sexually assaulted a female employee of the bank. That was not something related to robbery. So that is why I will not be held liable. So if two things are related, है ना, जैसे कि मैंने किसी को बोला कि जाओ उसको थप्पड़ मार के आना, वो गया और उसने टांगे तोड़ दी, तो अब मेरी लाइबिलिटी है यस, बिकॉज मैंने उसको कम ग्रेव ऑफेंस करने को कहा, उसने ज्यादा ग्रेव ऑफेंस कर दिया, बट ऑफेंस सेम नेचर का है. ऑफेंस सेम नेचर का यानी कि मैंने फिजिकली हर्ट करने कहा था, मैंने टांगे तोड़ने बजाय उसने मार दिया, मर्डर कर दिया, तो उस केस में भी मेरी लाइबिलिटी बनेगी मर्डर के लिए, क्योंकि दोनों रिलेटेड है. पर मैंने उसे भेजा उसको मर्डर करने के लिए, वो डिफेमेशन करके आ गया. In that case, my liability will not be there for defamation. Okay. Third, obviously, act abated and when no act is done. अगर कोई मैंने act abet किया पर उसने कोई act किया नहीं, तो obviously still my liability will be there, but liability will be lesser. I will not be held liable for the entire whatever the liability would have been. मैंने किसी को मर्डर के लिए abet किया, उसने मर्डर नहीं किया, कोई हार्म नहीं किया, तो in that case my liability will not be life imprisonment, it will be much lesser. Okay. Then we have abatement of an abatement. Okay, yes, if I abet someone to commit an abatement, in that case also I will be held liable. जैसे suppose मैं एक सुपारी किलर को नहीं जानता है ना, but I catch a middleman. I ask them to hire a supari killer so that it cannot be traced back to me. So I abet someone to abet a contract killer to kill someone. In that case, whether I will be held liable, answer is yes. So if you instigate someone to commit a crime, I will be held liable. In that case, liability will still be there. So that is what we call rules related to abatement. Okay. So keep learning. In the next class, we'll discuss jurisdiction of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, and that will be all in the first module. So stay tuned. Next lecture we'll discuss jurisdiction. Jurisdiction means who can be held liable as per Indian criminal law. When a criminal will be held liable, in the case of in what case we can punish someone who has committed the crime. Okay, that we'll learn jurisdiction, adhikar kshetra. We'll discuss in the next class. If you have any doubts, any queries, please reach me at animesh@mpdnl.co.in. Keep learning. After we'll finish one or two modules, we will have certain practice questions, and I hope it will all be very valuable for you. It will help you in preparation of your CLAT examination. Okay, so keep learning. Thank you so much.